Story 1. I would like to remind all law enforcement and military personnel that I was just following orders was not an acceptable defense during the Nuremberg trials. Story 2. Feels like he just started the primer for how he will describe anyone who goes against his regime, the homegrown individuals. Story 3. I think Trump has a habit of saying the quiet part out loud, and the scariest thing to me is that people still don't take him seriously when he does it. When he starts making rambling, incoherent speeches about who will be the first lucky recipient of a big, beautiful nuclear strike. The best, mind you, the very best anyone has ever seen, so beautiful. I hope the intended targets pay close attention to every word, because he will follow through on every ridiculous idea he expresses, just to prove that no one will stop him. Story 4. No due process. No bringing back wrongly deported people. No accountability. Trump claims he can run as many times as he wants. He is acting like a king. We are living under tyranny, and the people seem fine with it. This is very concerning. The "don't tread on me" individuals, who should be alarmed, are cheering him on. It's all problematic. Story 5. Imagine a Democrat getting elected next, and the first official act is to have Trump deported to El Salvador. Story 6. It is extremely alarming. It is explicitly against the law to deport United States criminals to foreign countries without their consent. America is quickly becoming a dictatorship. What more can be said? Story 7. I want to mention the Central Park Five. All 5 of those men were proven innocent, but Trump was determined to portray them as guilty. He still is. These will be the very violent criminals he claims are homegrown and should be sent to detention centers. There will be no due process, and black and brown citizens will suffer the most. Story 8. I grew up in Brazil in the 1980s. I can tell you exactly how this is going to go. The first phase is already happening, and that's the activists, especially students, since they are easy targets. Anyone involved in subversive or anti-Semitic activities is going to be picked up and shipped off. Next on the list are professors. Anyone that published anything remotely controversial is going to be branded an enemy of the state and will be picked up and shipped off. Back in the 1980s, we didn't have influencers, but I imagine anyone posting political commentary on social media will be a target as well. Next are journalists. All they have to do is come up with any bogus, trumped-up charges. Everyone who wrote or reported about the 2020 election is who they will go after first. After that, take your pick. Democratic politicians, lawyers, artists, musicians, anyone they deem an enemy. If you think it is impossible for them to come after everyone, since we are talking about thousands of people, you are right. The thing is, they don't have to go after everyone. They don't even have to go after hundreds of people. Once they disappear enough people, whoever remains will make a beeline for the airport or the borders and self-deport. In Brazil, there were many people who were lucky enough to see the writing on the wall, worked out their timing perfectly, and went into self-exile. Many people stayed abroad for a decade and only came back once the military junta was out of power. I became an American citizen in March 2020 and came down with COVID-19 a week later. I received a welcome letter from the former president. I am keenly aware that it means nothing. If immigration enforcement picks me up, my naturalization as a citizen means exactly nothing. Story 9. Americans continue to hold the belief that terrible events occur in other countries while we remain the beacon of hope, convinced that these political situations will not personally impact them. There will be many surprised reactions when the reality sets in. Story 10. First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. Story 11. Did anyone find this at all surprising? He is a fascist. To answer your question, it sounds quite bad. The fact that our country chose this willingly and with the popular vote truly defeated me. I have been working on blocking out my empathy for strangers because it is too painful. Story 12. As a U.S. citizen, I trust that our government is acting for our safety, and there is nothing that should concern us. Please hold on. There is someone at my door. Story 13. I believe a solution is necessary. Donald Trump is clearly unfit to serve as president. He is determined to act like a dictator, ignoring the rule of law and the Constitution. Story 14. I believe they are going to start deporting citizens who criticize them to prisons. I am certain they will proceed unless the courts intervene. Story 15. Was it really a hot microphone? I thought he said this, and they all laughed. Seriously, yesterday I heard this as just regular news. Now it's a hot microphone? Of course he's going to do it. Every negative thing we all worried about in 2016 has come to pass, and worse. We are currently at the point where innocent people have been rounded up and shipped off to a death camp, and nobody is doing anything about it. Of course, Trump will label anyone who disagrees with him a terrorist. It's already happening, and he'll get away with it because who is going to stop him? Story 16. It is sad and horrifying. I believe him completely. I am also not entirely shocked. We have been on this path for 25 years, basically since the United States Supreme Court handed the 2000 election to George Bush. Story 17. TODO list. 1. Create a list of everything Donald Trump said that everyone claimed would never happen, which actually did happen. Publish and broadcast the list. Repeat indefinitely. Note: I find it amusing that people believe he is unaware of what he is saying or when a microphone is capturing his words. These are known as trial balloons. Story 18. I live in mainland United States but was born in Puerto Rico as a United States citizen. I also have tattoos. I am feeling anxious for my safety. I travel almost every year to a destination outside the United States. I am going to Mexico later this year. Will I be allowed back in? Will I be detained because I have a Spanish name? Will I be sent to El Salvador? These were all possibilities before he made these statements. Now I am organizing my documents to be ready to leave this country before the situation affects me. Story 19. The Trump administration is currently arguing in court that if it can send someone to a foreign country illegally, it has no obligation to bring them back, even if a court orders it. Trump is trying to undermine free speech and deport permanent residents. I have no doubt that he will attempt to deport actual citizens, likely using the excuse that neither of their parents were citizens at the time of their birth. This could eventually extend to those who were born citizens. Trump disregards the Constitution, and many Republican leaders do not seem inclined to stop him. Even if one argues that some individuals are criminals, not all of them are. That does not justify sending them to a foreign prison, where they might serve life sentences for minor offenses, all without a proper legal hearing. We should prioritize the rule of law. Even if you believe Trump was politically prosecuted, he faced charges in a court of law. He was found liable for serious offenses and likely would have been found guilty of illegally retaining classified documents and for the events of January 6th. He was not simply jailed without a hearing. He had the opportunity to defend himself but instead attacked the judicial system. He is acting like a dictator, ignoring any court ruling he finds unfavorable. Hopefully, we will one day realize that just because we support something does not mean it is the right course of action. Story 20. My dad likes to complain about moments like this, Twitter and Facebook. He thinks that if social media and microphones weren't around to embarrass Donald Trump and his supporters, everything would be fine. He believes that the ability to speak or post is the problem. I say when people tell you who they are, believe them. Story 21. It is not a hot microphone moment since he has repeated it several times. This is what Adolf Hitler did as well. That is why concentration camps were in Poland and Austria and not in Germany. They are doing very terrible things to these people. Story 22. It is extremely alarming. It is explicitly against the law to deport U.S. criminals to foreign countries without their consent. America is quickly becoming a dictatorship. What else is there to say? Story 23. I disagree that it was a significant moment. That implies he said the hidden part out loud. He intended for people to hear it and be aware that it is coming. That is part of the plan. Desensitization to the idea before it is executed. Story 24. From the perspective of a German citizen living in 1940, Jews and other undesirables were simply being taken to a prison outside the country, and nobody knew what happened to them. It would only ever look like this. Story 25. I believe that mainstream media is not fulfilling its responsibilities and should be raising awareness about this issue. A person recently suggested exiling American citizens to foreign detention facilities. Story 26. I will probably be moving to El Salvador courtesy of the United States government. I have been eager to be a left-wing militia member online for years. There just aren't any left-wing militias to actually join. Story 27. Typical Trump. Always talking about the next big thing like it is some business deal. Homegrowns? As if people are just property to be moved around. His words reveal a lot about his mentality, profit over people as always. Story 28. Given that he labels anyone he dislikes as a criminal and is willing to do whatever he thinks he can get away with, I interpret this to mean that anyone Donald Trump or the Make America Great Again movement dislikes will eventually be targeted for illegal kidnapping and rendition to a concentration or slave labor camp on foreign soil. It is just a question of how soon, how many, and how successfully. Story 29. Not shocked. He has literally said for weeks that he planned to send U.S. citizens there. Even the White House administrators clarified that he wasn't joking and that he really means to do this. It has been in the news long before this particular meeting. Trump does not see average people as individuals. He has happily and openly talked about wanting to be president for life and wanting to arrest anyone who speaks against him. Since his inauguration, he and his associates have blatantly been trying to strip away the First Amendment rights of the public while undermining the government. I think the Republicans in the House and Senate need to take action and impeach him now before it is too late. But I also know that quite a few of them are aligned with him and only care about their power. It is going to get worse. The Supreme Court has allowed this to happen by giving him immunity and not being willing to limit his power grabs. Everything he is doing is illegal in some way, and it is up to the judicial and legislative branches to step up and stop it. Story 30. Genuinely, the United Nations needs to get involved at this point. The sweeping human rights violations we are witnessing right now are only going to get worse until the United Nations or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization steps in to get Trump to cease his actions. We should be taking the threat he poses to everyone extremely seriously. Story 31. Just as he says, he is going to disappear American citizens in foreign concentration camps without due process or any mechanism for their return. Effectively, the Constitution and the law will be disregarded. He is announcing the government tyranny that Second Amendment advocates have been warning about. However, it is not Democrats or communists implementing this, but rather their own actions. So, once again, the accusation serves as a confession. The United States was already a flawed democracy but is rapidly losing any semblance of it. Story 32. Here's the thing. You are under arrest. Why? It does not matter since there is no due process. When Kilmar's due process was denied, so was yours. You are just as guilty as Kilmar. Proof you were arrested. Do you doubt me? Well, try to get released then, you gang-involved individual. Speak with the handcuffs and leg chains. But be quiet about it if you do not want another beating. See how it works. Story 33. I believe we are facing numerous challenges. I acknowledge that I operate from a position of privilege as a white person. If I were to attend a protest, I would likely feel safe. However, someone who does not share my skin color might not have the same experience. I feel for anyone I know who is an immigrant, as they are forced to hide their identities and must be cautious about what they say on social media. Story 34. I'm just here wishing that person didn't miss. Trump has been slowly radicalizing me with every terrible thing he does. I don't want to become that person, but it appears nobody else does either. Come on, surely someone with decent aim would be willing to step up? All those people who answer yes to the question, if you had a time machine, would you go back and kill Hitler? Well, you don't have a time machine, but here's your chance to stay true to your word. Don't do it. But if you did, but don't. But if you did, you'd have a lot of fans, Mr. Mario. Story 35. I think it illustrates the foolish quality of conservatism. Consider the Target boycott and the protests against Tesla. If people didn't feel they had to stand up and fight for their existence, they would still be going to target every week, and no one would have a negative word about Tesla had Elon Musk not entered the debate. Egalitarian societies are always more prosperous and stable in the long term, while authoritarian societies are often poor and unstable. These billionaires supporting Trump would have ultimately made more money if everyone felt free to simply be, rather than mobilizing a significant portion of the population to use their resources to protest him. Story 36. It is surprising how easily all the Republicans have lined up behind this decision. Story 37. He repeated that when asked by a reporter, anyone who does not take him at his word, no matter how crazy it sounds, is a fool. Story 38. This individual needs to go now. He is a disaster for our country and the world, affecting everything. The issues with Canada, the difficulties with Greenland, the treatment of foreign nations, the silencing of university academics, and the tariffs are all concerning. Everything that comes out of his mouth is harmful. Story 39. He means it. We are going down a terrible dark path, and a large portion of this country is supporting it. The root of the problem is income and wealth inequality. It is driving the anger and resentment that have led to extremism. Either wealth redistribution occurs, or an authoritarian regime will replace democracy. Story 40. Thank goodness we did not elect Harris. Women can be hormonal and emotional. She would have behaved erratically as president. I believe some of the damage this administration will cause may never be undone. In other good news, Bobby Kennedy cut funding for data collection on issues like the rates of cancer and HIV. He has often demonstrated poor judgment, including a heroin addiction for 15 years. Story 41. I believe he should be impeached, removed from office, put on trial for treason, and convicted. I am not allowed to express my opinion on what the sentence should be. Story 42. Just one more reason to add to my list of reasons why I must peacefully protest the Trump administration. The Republicans are doing themselves no favors by refusing to investigate impeachment. They leave us no option but to deem the entire party untrustworthy and give them all a timeout. Story 43. I have some suggestions for the naming of those places: Arbeitsdorf, Auschwitz, Dachau, Bergen-Belsen, Mauthausen. Story 44. I have seen this one before. People will disappear, taken by individuals in or out of uniform. Families will pay large sums of money to get their loved ones back, whether dead or alive, or just to learn where they were sent. Those in power can now legally carry out kidnappings for ransom. People will use government agencies to do their dirty work, such as calling a hotline to make their ex-girlfriend's new partners disappear or anyone they don't like. Since there's no due process, who's going to stop them? These are just a few examples that come to mind when I think about our own history. Believe him when he said that. Story 45. He wants to build concentration camps. I do not understand why people are not more alarmed by this. Alongside the camps for individuals with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, they essentially want to disappear as many people as possible. Do not wait for these individuals to change their minds. They will not. They need to be removed from power. Story 46. He is the most anti-American president in history, and it's not even close. No one who supports this rhetoric can claim to love America or care about the Constitution. Story 47. Like everything he says, it is a lie, a joke, and a strategic negotiating move until he implements it. Then it becomes a brilliant idea we should have adopted earlier, just like what Biden and Obama did. Every time without fail. Story 48. A hot mic moment implies that he was speaking without intending to be heard. However, he clearly intended for his comments to be heard. Story 49. I am getting tired of these questions about Trump. The answers are always the same. It is frustrating. Story 50. I believe this has always been the plan. He hasn't even been in office for 100 days yet. And that's where he already is. Every step is a test to see what he can get away with next. His goal seems to be to deport and imprison every person in the country who won't bow and show allegiance. He's already aligned with major technology companies and has shared personal information with them. Do you really think he won't start targeting individuals like us who simply disagree with him on social media and online forums? He will portray anyone who isn't supportive as un-American, and many members of the opposing party will back him and defend his actions while their family members disappear into prisons in El Salvador. Or he might fabricate crimes, as he did with Garcia, and when anyone demands evidence, he will just laugh and say, "Sorry, they're gone. Can't do anything about it now." Story 51. I just can't get over that around 40% of this country sold their souls for Donald Trump of all people. For the rest of my life, I'll never understand. That guy? The one you can see right through? The one who is so obviously the embodiment of every bad, immoral, greedy trait you could ever embody. Even people I know from my hometown, who are theoretically educated and rational, bend over backwards to kiss his feet. How did it come to this? How did you elevate this guy as your choice for leader? It just makes no sense. Story 52. I would like to know where all those people who said, "Calm down, his first term wasn't so bad," have gone. They have been unusually quiet lately. Story 53. If Trump and his administration are not stopped, you or someone you know is headed for a dire situation in the near future. Story 54. Remember what happened to Gaddafi? He actually did a few good things, and look how he ended up. Story 55. The fact that he already has the term homegrowns to describe it indicates that it involves more than just him. He heard this term in internal discussions. There are already plans in place, and this term is what they decided on as shorthand. This wasn't an impulsive statement. It's Trump being foolish, saying something he shouldn't have because he lacks the awareness to refrain from it. This makes me wonder what other plans they won't even disclose to Trump until it's time to go public. Who are they? The people at the Heritage Foundation who are actually in charge. Trump is merely a useful spokesperson and figurehead. Story 56. This is how the Nazi Party rose to power. The reflections are horrifying. He is discussing concentration camp prisons in El Salvador, while American news focuses on Katy Perry's space trip instead of addressing this fascist nightmare. Story 57. I believe it is a significant issue that he intends to cross. There is no way he can order the rounding up of people who simply express their opinions without provoking outrage. It is immoral what they are doing. At least there is evidence that some detainees and migrants are somehow connected to illegal or gang activity. Claiming someone is anti-American can mean anything, and honestly, most left-leaning Americans on Reddit could be jailed. How did we get here? Story 58. We should not only believe that, but also consider who might be next. What is to stop him from adding journalists and dissenters to that list? The likelihood of our doors being kicked in and us being taken away in the night to a torture or prison camp has just increased. Story 59. Deportation is a threat for illegal immigrants and has predictably become a reality for foreigners with legal status. Now, the leader is saying American citizens are next. He uses the example of violent criminals, but it will not stop there. A president above the law can send any of us to a prison in El Salvador on a whim. This is where the current political climate is headed. You have been warned. Story 60. In the song, "Nazi Punks Fuck Off" by the Dead Kennedys, there's a verse that goes, "You still think swastikas look cool. The real Nazis run your schools. They're coaches, businessmen, and police. In a Real Fourth Reich, you'll be the first to go." This song references skinheads, but that last line is something people really need to consider. I think about it every time Trump speaks. Story 61. I think people need to read Project 2025 because he is literally using this as his blueprint. The thing he said he has never heard of. Story 62. When fascists are caught on an open microphone, you should generally believe them. However, Republicans have already shown themselves to be spineless traitors, so it is doubtful that will change. The Republican Congress has been missing in action since voters weakened the Democrats in the election, and now we are marching toward worst-case scenarios. Story 63. There is no apparent end to this nonsense. The ball is now firmly in the hands of the American people. Story 64. How many times are we going to hear his direct statements and ask, "What do you think?" as if there is some level of nuance or subtlety to his desires. It is far beyond time to think he means it, as incomprehensibly foolish and unnecessarily cruel as it may seem. We are working with a president who has spent more than a decade clearly identifying himself as a dangerous combination of vindictive and mentally unstable. Story 65. These people are being sent to El Salvador, so you cannot get them back. Still, nobody does anything. Americans do not know if they are being killed, used as slaves, or tortured. Still, life goes on in America as if everything is perfectly fine. This will continue to happen to more and more individuals in America. How is America allowing this to continue? Many countries have overthrown their governments. America just accepts that this is the way things are now. He does not listen, so what can you do? Doing nothing is not an option. Citizens of your country may never come back. When will you take action? When it affects your neighbor, your coworker, or your friend? How close does it have to be to home before you come together and stop it? Story 66. It wasn't a hot microphone. They wanted everyone to hear that to scare everyone into compliance. Story 67. He is usually a compulsive liar. This time, he accidentally told the truth. I hope he suffers long before his facilities are built. Story 68. We should be concerned because it has always been the plan to remove undesirables from the laws that protect them from tyranny. Story 69. White-collar criminals are part of the Trump administration, while others are sent to a concentration camp in another country, never to be seen again. This is what Republicans voted for. Story 70. That wasn't a hot mic. We were meant to hear that. It is a threat and should be treated as such. Story 71. These are the camps that individuals were inquiring about. If we are such wrongdoers, then where are the camps? Remember, compliance is culpability. Story 72. He clearly means it, and I will go further and say that it does not even need to be a heated moment. He has spoken worse during open microphone events, and he will do worse in the future as well. The judicial and congressional branches of our government lack authority and are completely ineffective. There seem to be no consequences for any of his actions. Story 73. Why isn't there more concern about this? You don't need to commit a crime, and they can still deport you, blaming it on administrative error. Once labeled a terrorist, you will not be allowed back into the United States. This reflects the serious issues facing America. If you are critical of the former president and they find out, you risk deportation. Your tattoo that says "Live, Laugh, Love" could be misinterpreted as a gang tattoo. Story 74. Then it will be the fake news about people who disagree with him. He is not going to stop with just the worst of the worst. He is on a power trip. Story 75. He has committed every terrible crime he said he would. We need to stop projecting our sense of normalcy onto this madman. Story 76. He means it, and we need to rebuke anyone who tries to downplay this. He has always wanted to be a dictator. He is obviously a fascist by all definitions. It is time for Republicans and centrists to take this seriously unless they want to lose their rights too. Story 77. 60% of people think it is unacceptable, while 40% do not care because as long as something negative is happening to someone else, it makes them feel better about themselves. Story 78. This is not a new idea for conservatives. I remember when I was protesting against the Iraq War, plenty of people were telling us, both in person and online, including pro-Bush pundits like Coulter, Glenn Beck, and Rush Limbaugh, we're going to send you to Guantanamo Bay. Now they are actually following through with that threat. Story 79. This should be a wake-up call to America. If everyone starts applying pressure to their officials now, perhaps we can demand a new election after the extended tax cuts take effect. Story 80. Waiting for anyone in the Republican Congress to stand up and say, no matter what, Americans will not be deported. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.